Join us in Miami for Code Remix Summit. Attend hands-on sessions with some of the best industry experts. Looking for immediate ROI by attending? Bring a relevant business case and work directly on solutions affecting your organization in the hack track. Bring your problem, bring your laptop, and walk away with work done for your boss. Register today for Code Remix Summit.
Hey everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Code Remix Weekly. As always, we're your hosts. My name is Tim Spick, and with me, Sam Snyder.
Hello, everybody.
And you're wearing your Modern shirt.
I remembered this time. Mere minutes before the stream, I only have like one of these T-shirts, and I keep setting it aside on other days. Like, oh no, I should save that for a day where I live stream. Get some mileage out of the nice T-shirt, and then I keep forgetting to do it, so it just sits there taunting me. But today I made it happen. So it's so things are looking good, Tim.
Cheers. So yeah, good to have all of you with us, and it's another been good week for things in Modern. And as always, I'm going to take you through some of the things new in the past week or so, and then from there we're going to look ahead and we'll bring Shannon on as a guest for the deeper dive into TOML parser support in OpenRewrite.
Yeah.
First, some quick times to show you kind of things new in the past week. So one very noticeable change is if you're going to go to any of the Modern or OpenRewrite docs, you're going to see that they have been refreshed. So we've added some styling there. We also have an option now to go to night mode for the folks that prefer that, which is kind of neat. Where you're now able to browse this in more detail than you've seen before. So pretty neat. Go check that out. It's at docs.modern.io and docs.openrewrite.org. So then also note this week is that we just merged a new feature, which is going to be very, it'll have some effects that we're going to probably dive deeper into on a future call. But you can see the first work towards that already merged into the main branch of OpenRewrite, which is looking at introducing type tables as a replacement for the class path resources jars that we had previously packaged into our recipe libraries. And
yeah,
I think
it's a pretty cool innovation from Jonathan there. The challenge here, if you're not in your recipe authoring mindset off the top of your head, is when you have a migration library or a set of migration recipes like Rewrite Spring that need to move you from version 1 to 2 to 3 to 4, etc. of an API. Java template usage within those recipes might need multiple different versions of that library in order to work correctly. And if you're familiar with the Java class path, you might well have experienced how mixing multiple versions of the same library on a single class path makes for predictably bad results, let's say. And so we have this mechanism available currently where you can bundle in jars in order to provide Java template or similar usages control over exactly what they're putting on their class path so that recipe results are predictable. This has a number of unfortunate consequences, like bloating the size of the jar. I think Rewrite Spring is like 50, 60 megabytes or something last time I checked, and that's almost all down to jars included for class path purposes. And then, in a cruel irony, that leads to this tool which is used to fix and modernize your code and get away from vulnerable versions of old dependencies, getting flagged by security scanners because they'll look inside it and be like, hey, I see old version of Spring in here, block that, don't let that into our organization. And we're like, no, but it's there to help. The code isn't actually going to run. But yeah, so we're looking forward to seeing type tables implemented everywhere so that we will not have to bloat the size of recipe jars or get them unnecessarily flagged by helpful security tools.
Yeah, I'm already looking forward to just stripping out that section of the docs where it says, well, no, it's not actually an issue, it's there to help, but yeah, it should be good. So yeah, this is the first work towards that. And of course, once we've landed this, that will also unlock new use cases. We'll be more easily able to pull in more and more signatures of public APIs that we see, and be able to use that for recipes and use cases that we haven't been able up to now, because you're not going to pull in a couple 100 megabytes of jars to be able to do that. So yeah, keep your eyes on that. And like I said, we'll probably dive into this on a future episode. But it's already merged, and then you can see the effects if you want to look into it on the OpenRewrite.org. So I'll share this link in the chat, and then you can have a look for yourself as well. Now, also new in the past week is that we merged full support for Java 21. We had previously already added a parser for Java 21, but there were some edge cases that weren't yet fully covered. So what we've done now is that we're fully able to add to parse Java 21 in a print item point way, such that you can parse whatever structure is valid in Java 21 with our parsers, and then reproduce, modify, all of that goodness that you can do with recipes. Very glad to have landed this one. And then of course this unlocks future recipes that will help you adopt these new pattern matching for switch or pattern matching for records that have been introduced into the language, but needed a functional parser to handle that first. So pretty good. So I'll share a link there too. And this will make it into the next release that we do. We're probably going to do one tomorrow or the day after, clearing out some last hurdles there. And then this should all be good to go. Now, yesterday there was a jug in Atlanta where Jonathan presented on the state of AI in large-scale automated refactoring. And the video is already online. So if you want to see exactly what was presented there, then you can go to this URL, which we've just shared, to get the latest updates on the AI for large-scale refactoring.
Yeah, it's a good presentation. I've seen it before, at least a similar one. I recommend checking it out. Whether you are an AI skeptic or enthusiast, I think you will find that it speaks to you either way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's pretty glad to have that video immediately available. Now, looking ahead, there's a couple of events coming up. So one is Snow Camp in France, which it would have been a perfect conference for me to attend, but sadly I'm not there. But we do have a friend of us who's going to present on OpenRewrite for refactoring your code in French, which I would be hard pressed to do. But I do hear that there's snowboarding involved there as well, so I'm really sad to miss out. But if
You've got a snowboarding vacation coming up next week, right, Tim?
Yep. I already, like, that corner of the room, I have all my snowboarding gear, and it's been smiling at me for the whole week. Just getting ready.
Nice. Well, I'm glad you won't be powder deprived. Hopefully, the conditions are going to be really good for you, and hopefully, I come up with such a good topic for next week's stream, where you will not be here to help me out.
I think we do have some colleagues already pitching in with ideas and suggestions. So
yeah, don't worry, it'll be a good one.
So this is what is it? The 23rd. So that's tomorrow. And then beyond that, on the 29th next week is this presentation from Merlin. Together with me, we're doing a workshop in Germany, in Munich. So I'm connecting my snowboarding holiday to go to Munich in the other side of the Alps to give a workshop on analyzing, automating, and scaling your modernization efforts. This should be good. I'm really looking forward to this one. So be sure to check it out if you're in the area. Also, in that same week, the 29th, so that's exactly a week from now, then Merlin will give a presentation at the Dortmund Java user group. So if you're around that area, then definitely check that out. I'm not sure if they're going to do this online, but it is in German language. So if in that sense, if you're interested and you speak German, then do check it out.
Or if you're a very enthusiastic learner who's quick on the uptake.
It's if you already know the subject somewhat, you're watching this live stream, so you're probably aware that it might also be a great way to learn German if you already know OpenRewrite.
There you go.
That's
Yeah, my father likes to who speaks a couple different languages. He likes to keep his German knowledge fresh by rereading books that he's read in English, reading the German edition, so he already knows the context. So yeah, so if you are an open rewrite or recipe authoring enthusiast, yeah, and want to brush up on your German skills, could be a good way to do it. Think about it. Yeah, there you go, Kevin. Yeah, now you want to talk about someone who's good at learning languages. Kevin is good at learning languages. I fully believe that Kevin could pull that off.
It's he's been known to learn a language in a week and then join a call with folks and speak to them in fluent Portuguese,
Yeah,
even though
do a
it's
whole business meeting in a new language for the first time. You know, talk about like stage fright or performance anxiety or whatever. New language, business meeting for work. Brave man, Kevin Carpenter.
mhm. So yeah. Um, I'm going to present at a different German technology meetup, but I get to do it in English because they've asked me at a different meetup to do it in German, and I said, well, you only gave me 1 hour. If I have two, then I could maybe pull it off. But thankfully, they're gonna just give you 1 hour to do this. So this one is going to be streamed online. So it's if you do want to check it out, then I've shared the link in the chat right now.
Did
So
you
this
try?
one
Did you
you can
consider just
register.
going to that, delivering your presentation in Dutch, and then just gaslighting them? Like, no, I'm speaking perfect German. It's you who doesn't understand.
It's organized by a good friend of mine, so I'd like to stay friends. So I'm not going to surprise her by switching to Dutch and just calling it German.
All right, fair enough. Fair enough.
It's good to have friends, and it's good to stay friendly. Yeah. And then finally, we also have a new video out. So if you want to create custom recipes with the modern recipe builder, then we have a video that goes into more detail there. Just 4.5 minutes to tell you exactly how you can do so. It's voiced by the lovely Kevin in English, so it should be nice and accessible. And it's a very pleasing one to listen to.
But if we ask him nicely, we could probably get a Portuguese language voiceover. So let us know in the
Probably.
comments if we should have Kevin re-record it in Portuguese.
Would be nice to just give him a challenge of doing like a new language every week on just expanding
Yeah.
our coverage.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's it in terms of updates that I wanted to show you all. So that then brings us to the main topic of the week. I think.
Yeah, which brings us to our guest, the one and only Shannon Pamperl, open rewrite, open source contributor extraordinaire. And if you've ever run a recipe that manipulated a Gradle dependency or any other aspect of a Gradle build, you have directly or indirectly benefited from his work. And now he has seized the distinction of being the first ever person outside of Modern to have contributed a language parser to the code base. In this case, for the TOML data format, which, following on to the Gradle context, is used in one of Gradle's many different ways of declaring version numbers for your dependencies. So, welcome, Shannon. Pleasure to have you.
Nice to be here.
Yeah. So I figured today we would just kind of talk about your motivations for doing this, as I've already alluded to the Gradle use case, how you went about it, what that implies for the future, and then maybe what you might be thinking of hacking on next. Sound good?
That sounds good.
Right on, man. So as you and I well know, there's no limit to the number of ways you can declare your version numbers in Gradle. You could do it in a script in the build source directory. You could do it in an included build. You could have a script plugin. You could put it in the extended properties. It's really that XKCD comic of, there are 14 standards. Oh no, we got to fix this. Let's make one universal standard to unify them all. Now there are 15 standards. So what about this 15th standard for declaring version numbers called out to you and made you decide we need to be able to address this with recipes?
So I can't actually take full credit for this one. This one was actually, it started out from another contributor, Steve Teplica, over at Intuit. Over there, they have this goal of using, TOML for version management. So like, it very much resonated with him. And then,
Right.
Canute got him and I connected. I hadn't done a language parser before, so I was like, you know what? Why not? This
Let's
sounds
take
like
a stab
fun.
at it. How hard could it be?
Exactly. You've modified an LST before.
Yeah.
It can't be that much more difficult.
Right. And
So
was it?
no, not really.
There you
Not
go.
really at all. So alongside Steve, him and I went through kind of in parallel building out the TOML parser, comparing implementations back and forth, figuring out like what's the right way to design this in a way that, meets the goal of parsing TOML files primarily for Gradle version catalogs as the end result.
Are there any other major use cases? Because when I first heard of TOML, it was in the context of Gradle version catalogs. Do you happen to be aware of other domains where that has popped up as a common data format? I mean, you could use it for anything you could use like YAML or XML for, right? Like it's just
Yeah.
another
It's
human
another
readable,
config
human
language.
editable-ish configuration language.
One area that I've seen it used is Grafana's configuration format. That's how they define all of their configs for connecting to data sources or whatever. So I mean, as you can imagine, that could be imported into Kubernetes YAML, which then translates up into now it's in Kubernetes land. Like
That's
there's a
true.
lot of other pathways that TOML can show up from beyond just Gradle.
Right. Yeah, we use Grafana extensively. I wonder if the our whole the instrumentation for all of the modern SaaS tenants is visualized and operationalized through Grafana. I wonder if we have any scenarios where we could use a TOML recipe to help with that. I'll have to chat with Kevin and the other guys on the platform team, see if maybe there's an opportunity there. Do you use Grafana much at Shelter?
I haven't yet, but I mean, we use Grafana for sure, but I haven't used the TOML parser for Grafana configs yet. There isn't any reason that it shouldn't parse just fine. I mean, it parses all the TOML specifications without any issues. So at that point, it's more just like, oh, it's a onesie twosie thing versus a large scale refactoring. So then it's like, okay, well, what's the cost benefit analysis there?
Totally. Yeah, as fun as it is to automate a process that you are only going to manually do once, the ROI isn't always there.
Yeah.
So you got started on this project working in concert with the other contributor from Intuit. I imagine that were you already familiar with Antler? For anyone who doesn't know, when we do language support for a programming language, we tend to integrate with its compiler because we want to get the type attribution out of it. A data format like TOML doesn't have a compiler, or if it did, it wouldn't be that important to us because we don't need type attribution out of it. So we typically will start with an Antler grammar and have that generate a parser to kind of get us started. So Shannon, were you already familiar with Antler going into this?
So I hadn't actually played with Antler directly. I've read a couple of the grammars now and again, but one of the things that kind of like prepared me for it is that I took a compilers class back in college, where we basically hand wrote our own grammar for a made up language.
Yep.
So I
had the same experience. Yeah.
Yep. So I kind of knew the structure already. So it was just kind of like, oh, well, okay, this makes sense.
Yeah. I had a similar experience, never having like directly set out to learn Antler, but just coming across it being like, oh, a context-free grammar. I remember this from school. This looks kind of like I expect it to. Might not know the meaning of every single little special character, but like I got the gist of it. And I found that there's an IDE plugin for IntelliJ, which is really helpful for testing like a snippet of text against a whole or a subset of an Antler grammar. Did you use that? Were you aware of that?
No, I hadn't been using that. I was just using rewrite tests. So.
All right, I'll have to show you later because it's really helpful when you're fiddling with an Antler grammar,
Gotcha.
and you can see, you can you put up the rule and then you can test it and put in a bit of text and it'll show you what of the text is matching what part of the rule. Maybe while we chat, I could get a live demo of that going. Yeah, so even without the tool assistance or a whole lot of Antler experience in the past, didn't find it too hard to get going with that grammar. You didn't create that grammar from scratch though, right? You
No,
didn't
I
just
did
like
not.
look at TOML and be like, I see the structure here. You found some other reference for that?
Yeah, so there's a GitHub repo cache of Antler grammars that the Antler team maintains as
Very
open
helpful.
source. So I started out there by stealing that version and
Borrowing.
attributing. You just properly attribute it. It's all good, right? Now that grammar had some quirks, the original source grammar, so it had to be modified a little bit. One example that comes to mind is the TOML table. A table is, a set of square brackets, table name, and end square bracket, and then a series of key values that are associated to that table. In the original source grammar, the way that they defined it was the table header was its own LST element, or AST element rather. And then each key value was an independent sibling AST element alongside it. So when you try to convert that to an OpenRewrite element, LST element, you really want the parent-child relationship of the table owns the key values that are part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. I think this is a great example of like the single responsibility principle in programming, and that's a term or a design guideline that is thrown around a lot, and I think sometimes misunderstood. Some people will use the single responsibility principle as an argument that everything should you should trim down a function until it's like a single expression, right? And that everything should be atomized throughout your code base until everything is as irreducible as possible. And if you're just snapping together these atoms that each does exactly one thing, you'll have robust and reliable code. And I think that can lead to a very difficult to read and hard to maintain design with a lot of unnecessary oversimplification. And I find that the principle is better understood as things that change together should be organized together. And I think this is a great example of that, of like, well, if you're going to be changing a table, the things you're going to change are the heading or the contents. So those should be together in one data structure so that you can change both of them together. So yeah, when you told me that originally, I was like, it was kind of baffling. I'm like, they weren't already organized together in the grammar. But I guess if it's if you're just seeing it as a document format, that like it doesn't matter. Like a human's going to edit it, and how they conceptualize, fingers on keyboard, and how they conceptualize it under the hood, doesn't matter in terms of just like parsing it. But yeah, so thanks for doing that. What a bizarre design choice.
Yeah, it was an interesting one.
Is that something you've considered to upstream as well, since they have a reference?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely something that I think would make sense to upstream. I hadn't really gone through the effort to do that yet, but I could see where the upstream Antler people would find benefit of those being related together, whereas they aren't today.
Yeah, so I think that provides a good opportunity to show like the Antler plugin and like testing some of these rules, and showing anyone who might not already be familiar what one of these a context-free grammar for these look like. So I'll just share my screen and show you and our viewers. So this is the TOML parser antler grammar, the context-free grammar that Shannon adapted, and I have installed the Antler plugin, the Antler v4 plugin for IntelliJ, and I find this very helpful whenever I have to edit an Antler file, because like you can, any rule where you're like, I want to test something against this, you can right click on a rule in here and say test the rule, and that kind of loads up this little parse tree window down here, which points out that the text I have here is missing a comment, and whatever text I put in here is going to try and interpret as a comment. This could be like, that's still not a comment, but if I put in more stuff, it'll be like, oh, this part on the right is a comment. This thing on the left isn't anything. That doesn't match the rule, but you can test a piece of text against any one of these rules, starting from the top level one, document, to any individual little piece, so that as you were trying to change or modify or add support for something in Antler, you can continue to check and see if it matches your expectation of how it should work. So like down here, for the table thing that you're talking about, we could test the table. We can like read the table rule and see that according to this grammar, you can have a standard table or an array table, and the standard table definition and array table definition both begin with a bracket character around a key name. And this is, I think, the part you're saying that in the original grammar you adapted, this was separate, right?
It just did that part.
Interesting. And so then there's must have been other parts of the grammar for just like an expression where these like lists of expressions could kind of just be freestanding. So a table previously was just the heading followed by a bunch of unrelated expressions.
Yep.
Interesting way of organizing things. Yeah.
There were similar quirks with like inline table and array table as well.
Right. Yeah. Well, hey, good job cleaning that up. I think it definitely makes it more comprehensible. But of course, getting a working Antler grammar together is just the first part of the process. So because the parser Antler generates isn't exactly an OpenRewrite parser, right? You have to adapt that parser into an OpenRewrite parser. So what was that process like for you?
I mean, so that process is, fairly similar because you get an Antler visitor, which is the same pattern that you're used to with, any LST visitor. So then it's just a matter of, all right, well, what do the OpenRewrite LST elements need to contain? What should their shapes be? Should, the left-hand side of a key value be an identifier and the right-hand side be, some TOML element of, arbitrary shape? In this case, I chose literal because that's what they are. But then you start getting into like other nuanced questions like, okay, well, TOML has, I think it was 8 different literal types that all can be, handled differently. So now you start getting into, well, how do you want to handle strings versus booleans versus date times, which are in 4 different formats.
Only 4. That sounds fairly constrained.
So it's definitely interesting when you start, breaking it all down. Like, it was a fun journey.
Yeah. Did anything particularly surprise you in the process of implementing that? Anything that, I mean, I guess we already talked about the table heading thing, but was there anything else that jumped out at you as novel or unexpected or a challenge that you didn't anticipate?
I can't really think of anything offhand. The table part was kind of the biggest, like, wait, what?
Curveball, yeah.
Other than that, it was really just, I think the next biggest one was how to like model literals so that it made sense. Because in all the other OpenRewrite LSTs, we always think about the type of literals.
Yeah.
So being able to capture that in a way that made sense for all of the different ways that you can define a literal in TOML, from dates to times to offset date times to Booleans to string values to not a number to decimals to floats. Like,
Right.
it's all over the map. Even like little idiosyncrasies, like being able to put, plus nan or minus nan,
Right.
and those being the same as the naked nan value.
Uh-huh.
So it's like, whew. Keeping track of them all.
Yeah. Just go ahead, Tim.
And that's you have to handle all of it, because we're gonna run this at scale, and folks are gonna endlessly surprise you with the things they come up with. And if it's valid, they'll use it. Yeah.
Anything that can be done will be done over a large enough scale or time frame.
Yeah, for sure.
Right on. So now the parser is in there, and you created the kind of parser visitor to translate into the OpenRewrite format. Have you adapted any recipes to use this yet?
Not yet. That's on the to-do list.
Right on. What's the thing you're most excited for? Right? Are you looking to create a recipe that adapts existing dependency declarations to use these TOML version catalogs? Are you wanting within your organization to affect that migration?
I think my first step is getting that GitHub issue for version catalogs finished. I mean, that we're already so close to doing that, even from an open source ecosystem standpoint.
Right.
That jumping from versions can exist in our properties to versions can exist in a TOML file, it isn't a huge leap anymore.
Totally.
It's just, okay, let's have another visitor and another file to touch.
Absolutely. Do you see what is I suppose the main advantage that you would see of using like a TOML version catalog over a Gradle properties file is consistency and separating version numbers from other configuration that is not version numbers, perhaps?
Well, so that's part of it, but there's another kind of tangential feature that Gradle introduced when they introduced version catalogs, which is type-safe accessors.
Yeah.
Which basically what they do is they take a TOML file, in this case, they do it for projects as well, but they recreate the TOML pathing in essentially dynamic Java or Groovy Kotlin code. So that now you can refer to a dependency or a dependency bundle, and the IDE can actually help you traverse the tree without seeing the file itself.
That's nice. That's really nice.
So, you take something like, I'm going to pick on Groovy, which has, 15 modules.
Yeah.
Well, you could create a Groovy bundle that brings in Groovy, NIO, what have you. And now you just say, all right, I want an implementation on libs Groovy. And then you get all of those dependencies that were part of that bundle. Where each of them have their own coordinates, their own version numbers, probably a reference back to the parent table of versions, which is
so you could not just define version numbers in a dry way with this format, but you can define groups of related dependencies in this way. Not exactly like a BOM, because a BOM only provides version numbers but doesn't explicitly request those dependencies. This could both provide the version numbers and actually add the dependency to a particular configuration. That's handy.
And then those are usable throughout the entire project uniformly. So you don't have to copy and paste the same dependency declaration or use old hacks like all projects, sub projects.
Right.
Creating a Maven module just enough for, all right, well, I want to import this group. Let's create another Gradle project.
Yeah, and making it easier to be dry about your version numbers in a way that doesn't force you to use those cross-project configuration methods, like all projects and sub-projects, makes your build more amenable to build caching and configuration caching, which can, if you can fully take advantage of those things, can make a Gradle build really, really instantaneous feeling. So that this not only provides an organizational benefit or allows you to clean up the aesthetic frustration of having 14 other ways that dependency versions are declared, but move towards your builds actually being faster and more instantaneous, both your IDE calling out to Gradle and you using it on the command line.
Yep.
All right. So yeah, so we should all kind of want a recipe that would migrate you from other ways of declaring versions to these version catalogs for that reason.
Yeah.
All right.
They're definitely
All right.
beneficial. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. That yeah, well, that could be a compelling benefit. That has me more excited about changing our our dependency version declarations to use this.
Mm-hmm.
At least in multi-project builds. In a single project build, you just have the version numbers in your one build.gradle file, and it's basically fine. Can you use version numbers from TOML in settings.gradle as well?
Yeah, the type safe accessors are also accessible through settings.
Right on.
So you can use them for dependencies or plugins, for that matter.
Nice. Yeah, it didn't. There's that is sometimes a pitfall of other ways of doing version numbers in Gradle because of its it's the way its build life cycle works. Not all of the information is available in early phases of the build, so it sounds like that is well thought out.
Mm-hmm.
So, right on, Shannon. Very cool. Yeah, so we've got a whole bunch of opportunities to write useful recipes relating to TOML. What do you think might be next for you after, like, you finish the TOML issue? We update the existing Gradle version, updating recipes to be aware of TOML versions and handle those well. What's the next parser you're gonna make?
The one I actually eyed first was Docker files because of their very simple language.
Right.
And how pervasive containers have become in our ecosystem.
Yeah.
It was kind of by chance that TOML came first. But that may end up being the next one.
Yeah, that could be handy. A lot of utility for that, for sure. A lot of Docker containers out there, and a lot of configuration as code in general. And like other forms of configuration as code, I find that in large organizations, it's very, very common that, like, you've got the guy who's the expert in Docker or Terraform or Kubernetes or Jenkins or whatever it is, and they create a file that does their purpose well, and then other people who are not as expert or not as interested in that technology, have other priorities, are like, well, I don't really want to learn how this works in depth. I'm going to copy and paste this one that exists and change a few little things, and they get it working for them, and other people repeat that process and continue to further mutate this document as it proliferates throughout the many repositories of their ecosystem in what is substantially like an evolutionary process where it's not necessarily survival of the fittest, but survival of the useful ones. But they, much like humans, have some anachronistic, good old copy paste engineering. Exactly. Tim and I both tried to show. You show the comment, Tim. Tim and I both saw this comment and loved it, and tried to make it live at the same time. So one of us would have it pop up, and the other would hide it as we were both trying to display it. Good old copy and paste engineering. So you end up with your build files or other configuration as code files proliferating and changing, and often bringing with them a lot of vestigial stuff. In the same way that the human body has a tailbone which exists only to hurt you when you fall on your butt, your configuration as code ends up with anachronistic configuration that made sense in some of its original context, but might not make any sense as it is now.
And then you have the poor soul at the end of the line that's like, why is our Docker image a gig and a half?
Yeah, why is our Docker image 10 gigabytes and loading up all of these services and tools that I've never heard of? And they go ask the guy they copied it from, and he's like, I have no idea either.
Every service needs this particular network storage attached, even though it's not using it in any way. It's just
right.
Yeah.
It's there to store metrics from 10 years ago, but there was already a migration to Prometheus since then. But that network storage is still there in every Docker file. Yep. Yeah, it really shows it's a great scenario for using recipes and tools like Modern to get any kind of handle on the situation. As without it, if you have 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 repositories, just being like, yeah, like what Docker files do we have is like an almost impossible question. Maybe not impossible, but a very work intensive question to answer. And then asking any deeper question of like, what anti patterns do they have? Like, what is similar? What is different about them? Like,
Yeah.
without automation, good luck.
Well, and there's even another kind of tangential part to some of these LST parsers too, and that they can almost be compositional as well.
What do you mean?
Like, Docker has the run command, right?
Right,
And then
right.
it's just a bunch of shell commands.
Mm-hmm.
So in a hypothetical world, is there a shell parser that then the Docker parser uses to parse out these to get even deeper?
Mm-hmm. That
Who
could be
knows?
interesting. When you question about Docker files, because it's been a while since I've edited one, when you have like the run command, can you like transpose in like variables or like template in like things that are referenced elsewhere in the Docker file? Yeah, that makes sense.
Args usually,
Right.
or environment variables that you can define, and then you can use them just like you would in a normal shell script.
Right. I remember reading back in the day. I remember reading at one point a few years ago an article talking about just the state of compilers and the state of parsers and what are the solved problems. And we're kind of all used to thinking of parsing as substantially a solved problem, right? You've got your grammar, you generate the parser, like you parse the thing, it's great. But it pointed out that one thing that is not a solved problem in parsing is embedding languages. If you have like a SQL statement embedded in a Java source file, making a parser, particularly when you're like interpolating, variables or things from the Java into the SQL or what have you, that is not a solved problem in parsers. There isn't like a formula you can go look up for how one interpolates or blends parsers together. So what you're saying about parsing the shell commands out of a Docker file sounds intriguing and potentially difficult.
Yeah, basically.
I think we have similar use cases already where it's looking at like SQL statements within Java string literals and
We
things like
do,
that.
but those are all have a an element of heuristic to them, right? They're not necessarily perfect, and you could always whatever we have, you could probably construct a different way of declaring a semantically equivalent code that obfuscated the SQL-ness of it sufficiently that a recipe, even a very intelligently designed one, could miss it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway,
String
software's
builder
interesting, huh?
string concatenation.
Yeah, exactly. Good old friend string concatenation. Right on. Well, yeah, I look forward to having a Docker file format. So once you, what do you have some use cases in mind? If you had a Docker parser at the ready that you would, a recipe that you would write with it.
I've got a couple of Docker files ourselves, but at the same time, like being a technologist, some of this is just for fun.
Yeah, for sure. You always gotta find some joy in it, right? It's hard to show up and give your best at work every day if you can't find some joy in what you do.
Yeah, I can pick on Tim a little bit because I always catch some PRs, some weird times, but you gotta do it for fun.
Tim's in it for the love of the game, and
Exactly.
also the paycheck. You can't understate the value of the paycheck, but the love of the game too.
It's like. I mean, it's maybe not the most tactical thing to do, but I would still be doing this if I weren't getting paid. That's like it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, absolutely. But yeah, we'll not use that as an excuse to exploit you. Please continue to be paid to do this.
As long as I get to go snowboarding once in a while, I'll keep doing this.
Yeah, please do go snowboarding and have a great time next week while you're doing that. Is it a whole week trip?
Yep.
Nice. Oh, that'll be great. Do you have like a cabin on the mountain, or like you staying near the slope, or?
Yeah, we have a cabin. I think there's one in one of the lifts in walking distance, and then from there we can go into like Switzerland and come back for lunch. And then, should be good.
That should be fun. Do you have to pay to cross the Swiss border? I feel like I remember
Yeah.
that there's some. Maybe I was just when last time I was in the area, there was like a toll highway to get there or something like that. Anyway, it's quite chilly where you are, Shannon, but I believe it's also kind of flat. Are you a skier or a snowboarder? You ever have a chance to get out there on slopes? Are there slopes within a reasonable distance of you?
Not really.
Yeah. Yeah, I grew up in a similar region of the country and never had occasion to really try skiing or snowboarding before I moved to Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like the Netherlands is known for its mountains either, but
Absolutely not. Yeah, yeah. If you ever fly over the Netherlands, like, wow, that is very, very flat. Well, right on. Well, yeah. Have a great vacation next week, Tim. Let's see. Is there anything else we want to talk about with TOML parsing, Docker parsing, making open source contributions to OpenRewrite? Have any further thoughts, Shannon?
Oh man,
I know it's very open-ended. I know hitting you with any further thoughts, it's kind of like, how do you even answer no to that? Like, no, I've become an unfeeling, unthinking object. I have no further thoughts. But so that's too open-ended. Apologies for stumping you with something vague. But if you do have any message to share with our audience, happy to hear it.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the general, if you got some interest in building parsers and you want some help, there's definitely resources out there that will get in the weeds for you or with you. So whether it's you guys over at Modern or other contributors on the OpenRewrite Slack or GitHub, I mean, people are there, willing to help out with these fun technologies.
Yeah, I know that I would personally rather receive a message that was, how do I implement parsing support for format, rather than, why don't you have parsing support for format?
And it's also fun to realize that you never quite know where things might lead. Like we have Greg, who recently joined the company. He started working on the, I think, HCL parser for Terraform just, I think, half a year ago. And now he's joined the company and doing lots of similar work, just looking at Antler and making improvements. And that's very good.
Yeah, not saying that's the only way to get hired here, but if you have demonstrably contributed some cool, useful, and working thing to the code base, I mean, there's no need for a technical interview, It's like, oh, well, we know he could do it because there's the commit. We all signed off on it and are happy to have it. So, makes those conversations easier.
And if you want to contribute that Docker file parser, I hear that you should hurry up. And,
yeah, before Shannon gets to it, yeah. Well, good stuff. Thanks so much for joining us today, Shannon. Always a pleasure to see you and to hear about your coding exploits, past, present, and future. I look forward to all of the recipes and parsers that you and others will create based upon TOML and maybe Docker in the future.
Sounds good. It was nice coming with you guys.
Yeah, thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone for watching. It's been a real pleasure. Do we have any final remarks, Tim? I suppose we should always mention, of course, the upcoming Code Remix Summit in Miami, Florida, in May, which is going to be a real good time. Shannon, you're going to be there, right? Right?
Trying to work it out.
Okay, cool. Let us know if you need any help working it out. We would love to have you there, and it'll be a great place to, I'm sure, meet your legions of adoring fans of all of the people in the OpenRewrite community who have, knowingly or not, benefited from your contributions.
Absolutely. So hope to see you all there.
Hope to see you all there.
I'll see you all in 2 weeks.
And I will see you next week.
Yeah, look forward to watching the show. So, thanks all, and see you soon. Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.